Okay, so another ditch, guys, is that while we do say that, all right, be careful, as far as, going, too far over to the left or too far over to the right. Whenever we're talking about going over too far to the right, as far as precautioning you against being only upper story, I also want to emphasize too that distinctions are not wrong in all areas. Uh, there are definitely going to be some things that God does call us that has to remain distinct, that should stay sacred, for example, the Sabbath. So, although we shouldn't necessarily divide the world into the sacred, what matters to God, and the secular, what doesn't matter to God, a person, you should recognize that some things are specifically going to be set apart for God. And while the two-story view tends to be dismissive of certain aspects of God's created order, the opposite extreme tends to ignore the distinctive place for certain aspects of God's created order. So while all of God's creative order is important, not all things are equal. What I mean is that God has different priorities, roles, and responsibilities for different spheres of culture. So, for example, a local body of believers shouldn't neglect the preaching of the gospel on Sunday in favor of picking up the trash on the side of the highway in order to model good stewardship to the community. So what this would indicate is confusion about priorities, roles, responsibilities. But the local church can certainly encourage its memberships to participate in community cleanup events and things like that. It's just that you have to remember that some things are distinct and some things are set apart. I guess probably one of the biggest examples I could give to you guys that would probably get you guys kind of sucking your cheeks in at me or not really happy about this, but is balancing homework and your church life. For example, one ditch would be, okay, have you ever justified avoiding your homework by engaging something more spiritual, as you have had, as if you have had no spiritual obligation to do your homework well? So I have to go to church, so I can't do my homework. And another thing would be, and so you never even attempted to do your homework, so you had to do something religious or spiritual. The other ditch would be, okay, have you ever justified skipping church to do your homework? So if I didn't get you in one area, I'm going to get you in the other area. Now, here's the road that you should take. And I understand life happens, guys, but whenever it becomes a pattern, then that's something where you're going to have to do your review, because here's the thing. If God encompasses all areas of life, including schoolwork, church is sacred, engaging your Christian community is mandated by Scripture, and it is sacred, but so is work ethic. So what that means is, is you're not excused from properly managing your time. You've got to learn how to find a balance, and that takes practice. It takes trial and error sometimes. Just remember, guys, that all things are important to life. Just as it's important that you engage your Christian community, it's also very important, too, that you develop a good work ethic, because God created work. So work is good, even though it's not always fun. So just remember that. Next, purity is very important. Now, and once again, this is in light of, okay, some things have to remain distinct. So we want to maintain that which is pure. So certain things in certain situations, you need to remember that some people can participate in and some people can't. And that's something that, unfortunately, a lot of us tend to get teased over, or we tease other people over. But remember, the fall did happen. And because of that, whenever it comes to keeping things distinct, it's going to also vary according to certain denominations, or maybe according to certain households. A popular conversation whenever it comes to this is alcoholism. We each have denominational beliefs whenever it comes to that. But for example, just using the Wesleyan Church, since I'm a part of that, if you are a member of the Wesleyan Church, you are allowed to drink. However, if you hold a leadership position in the Wesleyan denomination at all, any leadership position, you are not permitted to drink. Now, my husband and I have talked a lot about this whenever it comes to, just in general, forgetting, putting leadership and membership, all that stuff aside, just for us personally, our own personal conviction, we would choose not to drink. We would choose to abstain. And the reason why is because, one, Nathan's side of the family is very biologically inclined towards alcoholism. And so because of that, it's just not permissible. It's something that no matter what that type of living, that consumption has to remain separate, has to remain distinct. So it is not permissible. And because the reality is that the fall did happen and addictive behaviors are a result of that. And so, other scenarios that maybe are a little bit less complicated whenever it comes to, church policy, church government, would be what you would see in the workplace as far as businesses only wanting to, or businesses taking up a stand against LGBTQ. And so, for example, a lot of what you guys have heard about has been like bakery stuff when they've refused to do a cake for someone. That's made the news. I have a friend who owns a photography business, and for her it was, all right, do I take pictures or not of gay marriages? And so that's a huge reality that we have, and so we live in the reality that this world is fallen, and we're going to make some tough decisions. If you have not had to make some tough decisions yet, you have some tough calls coming your way. And so always remember, guys, that purity is important, and the Bible is very cut and dry on some things, that some things are to remain sacred, but at the same time is that whenever it comes to personal convictions and things like that, there's a place for it, and we have got to respect that and support and edify one another whenever it comes to that. All right, so coming up next, we're going to be going into 3.3, and we're going to be talking about the creation, fall, and redemption.